Well, good morning and happy hump day, everybody. Hope your week is going well and you're looking forward to being in church Sunday, already praying about who you're inviting for opportunities to share the gospel. Today, we are in the 12th chapter of Mark's gospel, and I love the teaching in this chapter. I think it's beautiful and powerful. For my devotion, I want to focus on verses 38 to 41, where he says, in his teaching, he was saying, so Jesus is saying this as he's teaching the people. Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like respectful greetings in the marketplaces, and chief seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets, who devour widows' houses and for appearance sake offer long prayers. These will receive greater condemnation. The scribes were individuals that you might call them experts in the Mosaic law, the Old Testament law, as well as the rabbinic traditions within Judaism. They weren't a particular religious sect. They could be a Pharisee, could be a Sadducee, or any of the other sects within Judaism. But the scribes were those who had special training in the Mosaic law and its interpretation. So think of someone who has a PhD in theology, a PhD in New Testament, something of that nature. And because of that, they were given prominence in the synagogue and in the Jewish Sanhedrin. They had some special authority because of their expertise in understanding the law and the traditions that the rabbis had added to the law over the years. Now, in this passage, Jesus condemns them for arrogance because they like to walk around making a show of themselves, wearing their long robes and saying long prayers out in the marketplaces, wanting people to, give them these special greetings. And you pick up a little bit of that in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus talks about prayers and fasting and giving. And so they really enjoyed their status, if you will. But what caught my attention was the one phrase in the midst of all those things they were doing for show. It's at the first part of verse 40, where he says they devour widows' houses, taking advantage of the vulnerable, manipulating them, these widows, for their personal financial gain, if you will. And Jesus says they will receive the greater condemnation. And my first thought when I was reading and thinking about that was some of these TV preachers, televangelists, who are very, very, very wealthy and like to talk about how big their house is and their private jets, and God wants them to be prosperous and wants them to have the biggest house and to be rich. I think there's a special place in hell for people like that. I really do. That's what Jesus is saying here, because they're not in it for the gospel, for the sake of people. They're in it for themselves, for their prestige, for their financial well-being, manipulating people, taking advantage of widows and others. And I say that again. I think there's a special place in hell for people like that. I don't care how much they pretend to be a Christian or preach. They're hypocrites. And I think when you do it in the name of religion, it makes it even worse. But they're not the only ones. There are scam artists out there in our country. I mean, how many of us refuse to answer our phone if the person's identity doesn't pop up on our screen? How many scam calls do you get? How many scam emails do you get? Text messages. It's nonstop. And there are special ones who target the elderly. Both of my parents are deceased. Both of Monisa's parents are deceased. And when her mom was in her 80s, she fell victim to one of these scams. Fortunately, it was stopped before she lost much, just a little bit. My mom, I remember being in her 80s with some, not full-blown dementia, but she wasn't as sharp as she, had been. And there was a time when my sister and I started really looking into her finances when she was still paying her bills. and noticed that there was a monthly donation. And when we looked into it, it was a monthly donation to AARP's political action arm. And Mom thought that she was actually giving money to help them actually give money to and help poor senior adults who were in poverty. Now, when they called her asking for her to make a monthly donation, the problem was she didn't really understand what they were saying, what was going on. She just thought we're helping poor people. She didn't understand that it was funding their political action group that yes is defending Social Security for the elderly. So I'm not accusing the AARP of misleading her. I'm saying in her 80s with her issues, she couldn't totally understand it, and I don't think it was proper for them to call her. She had no extra money to give, but she wanted to help poor people, especially poor senior adults. And the truth is, my sister and I became very angry and immediately stopped that monthly donation from her account. And when we explained to Mom, she sort of understood what we were saying that this was for. It was supporting them, lobbying politicians and stuff. She sort of understood that, but she thought, no, I'm helping poor people. I just think anyone who takes advantage of the elderly like that, and again, let me say this very clearly. I'm not accusing the AARP of being unscrupulous, but I am saying they should be wiser than to call the people in their 80s asking this kind of stuff when they don't know if that person's dealing with any kind of senility or dementia or whatever. And I just think anyone who doesn't take extra care to make sure they're not taking advantage of an elderly person, that's Jesus gets at that here. And I just think it's wrong. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow as we look at Mark chapter 13. See you then.